So I have this morning a special guest, Representative Andy Biggs, a congressman from Arizona, to help me better understand it. Congressman Biggs, thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
I think you and I share similar thought patterns when it comes to the border. I saw just the other day that Vice President Kamala Harris, who has been put in charge of the border situation, she just put out a two-plan system to heal the country and end the crisis at the border. Number one is to expand pathway to citizenship dramatically. And the second is more money to the border, but not to stop illegal immigrants from flooding in, but so that there's more agents to process them into the country at even higher numbers. How does this help the United States? What are your thoughts on her two-part plan?
Well, I think she's wrong-headed, obviously. So first of all, she's for providing incentives to come into the country illegally. Now, we all respond to incentives. I mean, I do. I mean, you do. Every week I get this BOGO from a restaurant in town, and so 3 times a month I go and I use that BOGO to get buy one get one free. And so and when you tell people we're going to facilitate you coming in, and we're going to do it as rapidly and as efficiently and humanely as we possibly can, what that does is that actually increases the incentive to come. And both her plans actually do that very thing. They promulgate the incentives. And it shows also this fundamental disconnect with what's really going on the border. We don't have a border anymore, Stephen. I was told this in 2019 when the first surge came in. I was told in a briefing that the cartel controls the border. And I said, well, what about the commercial trafficking? And he said, no. Everybody pays the cartel. If you're, at that time, the rate was, he says, if you're a produce truck coming in, you're paying between $200 and $300 per truck. If you're coming in with auto parts or technology, it's about $400. And if you're bringing cars and transporting cars across, it's $500 per truckload. An individual comes through. She doesn't know what she doesn't know even. And the reality is there is no border right now. And I was just with a CBP agent a couple of weeks ago at the border, not Eagle Pass, but down in Lukeville, Arizona. And I said, well, this is amazing. I mean, because you see, and I've seen it many times, thousands. I've literally stood in the middle of a group of 300 people as they're coming across. And you just go, wow, what's going on here? And he says, we don't have a border anymore. There is no border here. He said, I don't see this. He says, this will take a generation to sort out, but there is absolutely no border. And so Kamala's going to actually incentivize more people to come in than ever before. And when you consider that, including gotaways, you were over 400,000 people in December, that tells you that you're going to see even more.
So the Democrats claim that they are the party of kindness. Is this why they're allowing so many people from other countries to flood in, or is this to pick up future Democrat voters and stay in power?
It's a false kindness, a false humanity, if that's the case. I mean, Jerry Nadler said this 2 weeks ago. He said, they got to be here. We got to have these people here to pick our vegetables and fruits. That's what he said. Others have said they have to shore up and get these people in and get them so where they can vote, which is why you've seen some basically what I call pilot programs in various locations around the country where they have already allowed non-citizens to vote in local elections. They're trying to expand that to state elections, and they're actually trying to expand that to what we call the federal only ballot. And so you're seeing that, and it's a political incentive for the Democrats to go forward, but also the studies out going, whether you go back to Barbara Jordan or Harvard economist Jorge Borjas, who said that illegal migrants impact negatively blue collar workers the most, and particularly Black people and other people of color. A recent study that also came out within the last 2 weeks confirmed that yet again, and so the disadvantage goes to the working class and lower middle class, who want to have jobs, want to work, and they can't work because they're competing against illegal aliens.
Yeah, so basically they're driving down the wages or driving out the jobs or the job opportunities. That's really hard on those who have lived here their whole life. They've pledged allegiance to the flag. They've paid taxes. They've put into the Social Security system, and yet here comes somebody that can come in and doesn't speak English, doesn't know anything about America. They just know that they were able to get past the cartel. It just seems like such a slap in the face to American citizens. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, it really is. Can I share just a couple of experiences from being in Lukeville or Eagle Pass, and I go down a lot. In fact, I'll be down next day or two as well, back to the border. But here's the way to think of it. When I was in Lukeville, there was a guy from Utah. It was kind of funny. A young return missionary was down there, and he said, I said, "What are you doing out here?" Because he's in the middle of nowhere. We're down along the fence, and he's filming people coming through, and he says, "Well, I just wanted to find out what's going on," And I said, "That's cool." The off-duty CBP agent that was with me told him, "You probably shouldn't be here without protection, since the cartel is literally controlling the border. They will wonder what you're doing down here with a camera. So maybe you ought to move." Anyway, but what's funny is, literally as group after group of 25 here, 30 group, they keep coming. I'm standing there, and he yells to them, "Bienvenido America," and I'm like, oh my gosh, stop it. First of all, some of these people do speak Spanish, but having just come from the facility where they were processing, I can tell you, I talked to people from Guinea, Burkina Faso, Senegal, India, Pakistan. You just name it. If they were from all over the world in this one area. And by the way, Lukeville is in the middle of nowhere. It's a port of entry. That if you're from Phoenix, you're driving down to go to the Sea of Cortez, in Rocky Point, and so that's why that's there. It's a tourist POE. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. But the other part is, you go down, you say to these folks, "Where are you going?" They pull out papers that are laminated with phone numbers and the address where they're going, that we are going to send in. Report just came out today from Congressional Budget Office, where over 6.2 million people in the last 3 years have actually been released into the country under the parole system, which is supposed to be individualized. The reason I'm bringing all this up is because it gets back to your question about Kamala Harris. I just don't think that she's even paying attention to what's happening on the border, as most of my Democrat colleagues don't either. They still don't even think it's a crisis. We actually had a testimony last week in a hearing, and they said there's no crisis on the border. There's nothing going on the border.
Okay, so here's a great question. From someone who believes it's a crisis, you would say Kamala Harris is unfit. She's feckless. She's doing a terrible job. If you don't believe there's a border crisis, you would literally think she's doing an excellent job. She's getting an A. Like, what a dichotomy of thinking when it comes to evaluating whether someone's doing a good job. It's insanity to me.
Well, I think that psychiatrists may call it cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
She just doesn't. I mean, if they deny that it exists, then it doesn't exist. If they deny the fact that there were 12,000, get this, in Eagle Pass, there were 12,000 people under the border, under the bridge there, and the port of entry is right over the bridge, and underneath it there were 12,000 people there. And they just come in the last couple of days, and they're overwhelmed. But we were going to go down. Congress was going to go down. Republicans were going to go down. 60 members of Congress were going to go down, which I thought was a dog and pony show anyway. But they were going to go down. I told the speaker, I said, they're not going to have those people under the bridge anymore by the time you get there. And we got there, and within 24 hours, they had moved 12,000 people out from under that bridge because it was a Potemkin village. They didn't want the members of Congress to see how bad this thing really was. So they did it, and they tried to prevent me. And I went down, and I told the speaker, I'm not going with you because you're going to see Dog and Pony. I'm going to go down the day ahead of time, and I'm going to take 4 or 5 members with me who are really interested. And we did go down there, and they had just finished cleaning it up before we got there. And I said, well, we're going to go down. They didn't want to take us on the tour, but we were able to get some strings pulled. We went on down the border road, Stephen. And I said, look, I was down in Del Rio a year ago. I saw the Haitian thing. I know what goes on. Where's all the trash? You know, because this is a landfill. When you get 12,000 people under a bridge, even for 24 hours, the amount of debris and trash that's produced and human waste that's produced is overwhelming. And as we're driving along, just as we're talking about that, I'm talking to the CBP agents, there we see these big mounds and piles of all this garbage. By the way, that they didn't take the other 60 members out to the next day. The point is, it's cognitive dissonance by the people who could actually have an impact on the border. Just one last thing, and in the last year that Trump was president, the 124-mile stretch which constitutes the border in the Yuma sector, gets a lot of traffic. In that last year, there were fewer than 9,000 actual encounters in the Yuma sector, the entire Yuma sector, fewer than 9,000. I think the total for the whole year was around 500,000, something like that. I can't remember the exact number, but in that sector alone, 9,000. Do you know that they sometimes get that in a week now under this administration? So that's really the difference. And for them to say it's not a crisis and nothing's happening here, nothing of note is happening, is the cognitive dissonance of the Biden administration and the Democrats in Congress.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder if the Democrats don't quite understand numbers, because when it comes to the numbers with illegal immigrants, they don't seem to understand. When it comes to like the federal budget and spending more money and causing inflation, they don't seem to understand those numbers either. So maybe it's a numbers issue. Now, I know we're limited on time, so I just have one final question. Breaking news came out last night that the Supreme Court sides with Joe Biden 5-4 to tell the Border Patrol, go ahead and start taking down those barbed wire fences, any metal fences, chain link fences, the balls in the river, remove all of it. Yes, these people are coming in illegally, but we have to let them in illegally, but we have to do it safely. And so how come Arizona and Texas don't have control over their safety of their own state, their own border? How come everything defaults back to the federal government, and why would the Supreme Court side with the federal government?
Okay, so first, I'm going to go back to the first thing. The ruling, actually, it's a mishmash. I view it as, it's a terrible ruling because it creates confusion as to what the issue is, right? So at the same time that they basically said, we're going to remove the stay of the Fifth Circuit so you can actually take down the wire, they didn't say that Texas could not put back up the wire. So you see what I'm saying? You've got this kind of real crazy mishmash, and then they're still going to rule on this later in May. So for the next 2.5, 3 months, you're going to see Texas putting up wire and trying to stop, and you're going to have this CBP is going to try to take it down. And so you're going to have this push me, pull ya thing going on there. But in the meantime, Texas can take control of the golf course, which is the park that you keep hearing about. They can control the park. So it is and by the way, there was private sector land that they have this wire on. And so you got a mishmash of what's going on that. In the meantime, though, while you're waiting for the final ruling, if you keep going with the current rates that we have, you could see almost 1 million people before the Supreme Court comes back in and makes whatever their final ruling is going to be. You will have that many people that will have come across, and so it's it's a crazy thing. Now, so you say, why doesn't the state have it? Well, Article 4, Section 4 says the federal government must guarantee against invasion. I view this as an invasion. And this is where Democrats really get upset when I say this. This is an invasion. I mean, there are 181 countries that have come across already this fiscal year. 100 people from 181 different countries. And when I get down there, sometimes I can't understand a single word they're saying. They don't understand English. They're not even speaking French. I can understand a little French. I can understand, actually speak a little Spanish. If you're speaking Japanese, I can speak Japanese. But there are times where people that are coming from, they're speaking Farsi, whatever it may be. And nobody understands what they're saying. And you got Google Translate being used by CBP agents. So what I would tell you is Article 4, Section 4 requires the federal government to prevent an invasion. The federal government is also over immigration and naturalization. What that's been interpreted to be is border security. Although I think that's I think those are some conflict there constitutionally. But in the case called Arizona v. U.S. or U.S. v. Arizona, it should be U.S. v. Arizona. That was the old 1070 SB 1070 case. What happened is the court basically said until that the feds have jurisdiction to basically enforce federal border laws unless the federal government vacates the field. And that's the law on anything. If the federal government vacates the field, the states can step in. I would suggest that the federal government has actually vacated the field here and has allowed an invasion. That's the argument I would be making if I were the Attorney General of Texas. Arizona's governor has no interest of controlling the border. She removed barriers. She disbanded the Border Security Task Force that was put in place by previous Governor Ducey. But this is a contested area. Who should be doing border security policy? I think when the federal government has vacated it, as we're seeing, and because of Article 4, Section 4, we have tried to, in my office, tried to declare an invasion. Other members of Congress have tried to say there is an invasion going on and be it resolved, there's an invasion. We've not been able to get that done. If we were able to get that done, I think the states then would have at least an even more powerful argument that they should be allowed to take control of their border. But the governor has a responsibility and a right to defend his state population. And that's what should be going on here. That's what you see Greg Abbott trying to do right now.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I don't pretend to understand what it's like to be a congressman. I know that you guys are up against a lot. There's so many problems. It's almost like they're purposely overwhelming the system. But I appreciate all that you do and fighting for fiscal responsibility, keeping the country safe. You're one of the guys that I really like and look up to. So Congressman Biggs, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks, Stephen. And I'm sorry we got off on when you get me going on immigration, I run out of time. I mean, I know we probably wanted to talk a little budget, but maybe another time we could talk some budget and what's going on there. And you're right, it does cause inflation, out of control federal spending, a massive structural deficit leading to massive national debt. But thanks for what you do. Thanks for taking a few minutes with me today.
Great. Thank you.